Addiction and the search for wholeness. Why shouldn't we become addicted to another person? Why should we become addicted to another person? The reason why the romantic relationship is such an intense and universally sought after experience is that it seems to offer liberation from a deep-seated state of fear, need, lack, and incompleteness that is part of the human condition in its unredeemed and unenlightened state. There's a physical as well as psychological dimension to this state. On the physical level, you are obviously not whole, nor will you ever be. You are either a man or a woman, which is to say, one half of the whole. On this level, the longing for wholeness, the return to oneness, manifests as male-female attraction, man's need for woman, woman's need for man. It is an ultimate, irresistible urge for union with the opposite energy polarity. The root of this physical urge is a spiritual one, the longing for the end to duality and return to the state of wholeness. Sexual union is the closest you can get to this state on the physical level. This is why it is the most deeply satisfying experience the physical realm can offer. But sexual union is no more than a fleeting glimpse of wholeness, an instant of bliss, as long as it is unconsciously sought after as a means of salvation. You are seeking the end of duality on the level of form, where it cannot be found. You're given a tantalizing glimpse of heaven, but you are not allowed to dwell there, to find yourself again in a separate body. On a psychological level, a sense of lack and incompleteness is, if anything, even greater than on the physical level. As long as you are identified with your mind, you have an externally derived sense of self. That is to say, you get your sense of who you are from things that ultimately have nothing to do with who you are: your social role, projections, external experience, success and failure, belief system, and so on. This forced mind-made self, the ego, feels vulnerable, insecure, and is always seeking new things to identify with, give it a feeling that exists. But nothing is ever enough to give it lasting fulfillment. Its fear remains. Its sense of lack and neediness remains. But then that physical relationship comes along. It seems to be the answer to all the ego's problem and to meet all these needs. At least this is how it appears at first. All the other things that you derived your sense of self from before now become relatively insignificant. You now have a single focal point that replaces them all, gives meaning to your life, and through which you define your identity. The person you are in love with. You are no longer a disconnected fragment in an uncaring universe, or it seems. So it seems. Your world now has a center, the loved one. The fact that the center is outside you and that therefore you still have an externally derived sense of self does not seem to matter at first. What matters is that underlying feeling of incompleteness, of fear, lack, and unfulfillment, so characteristic of the egoic state, are no longer there. Have they dissolved? Or do they continue to exist underneath a happy surface reality? If in your relationship you experience both love and the opposite of love, attack, emotional violence, and so on, then it is likely that you are confusing ego attachment and addictive clinging with love. You cannot love your partner one moment and attack him or her the next. True love has no opposite. If you love has the opposite, then it is not love, but a strong ego need for more complete and deeper sense of self, a need that the other person temporarily meets. It is the ego substitute for salvation, and for a short time, it almost feels like salvation. But there comes a point where your partner behaves in ways that fail to meet your needs, or rather those of your ego. The feelings of fear, pain, and the lack that are intrinsic part of egoic consciousness but had been covered up by the love relationship now resurface. Just as with every other addiction, you are on a high when the drug is available. But invariably, there comes a time when the drug no longer works for you. When those painful feelings reappear, you feel them even more strongly than before. And there, what is more, you now perceive your partner as a cause of those feelings. This means that you project them outward and attack the other with all the savage violence that is part of your pain. These attacks awaken the partner's own pain, and he or she may counter your attack. At this point, the ego is still unconsciously hoping that its attack or its attempt to manipulate will be sufficient punishment to induce your partner to challenge or change their behavior so that it can use them again as a cover-up for your pain. Every addiction arises from an unconscious refusal to face and move through your own pain. Every addiction starts with pain and ends with pain. Whatever the substance you addicted to, alcohol, food, legal or illegal drugs, or a person, you are using something or somebody to cover up your pain. That is why, or after initial euphoria has passed, there is so much unhappiness, so much pain in intimate relationships. They do not cause pain or unhappiness, they bring out the pain and unhappiness that is already in you. Every addiction does that. Every addiction reaches a point where it does not work for them anymore, and that you feel the pain more intensely than ever. From addictive to enlightened partnership relationships. Can we change an addictive relationship into a true one? Yes. Being present and intensifying your presence by taking your attention ever more deeply into the now. Whether you are living alone or with a partner, this remains the key. For love to flourish, the light of your presence needs to be strong enough so that you no longer get taken over by the thinker or the pain body and mistake them for who you are. To know yourself as the being underneath the thinker, the stillness underneath the matter knows, the love and joy underneath the pain is freedom, salvation, enlightenment. To disidentify from the pain body is to bring presence into the pain and thus transmute it. To disidentify from thinking is to be the silent watcher of your thought and behavior, especially the repetitive pattern of your mind and the role played by the ego. If you stop investing it with a selfness, the mind loses its compulsive quality, which basically is a compulsion to judge and so to resist what is, which creates conflict, drama, and new pain. In fact, the moment that judgment stops through acceptance of what is, you are free of your mind.